Well, fight fans, we've had the best heavyweights in history. How about the West? Let's take a look at the worst fighters ever to hold the heavyweight championship of the world. The first duffer to win the heavyweight championship was probably Marvin Hart. Hart got the title opportunity because he'd been awarded a highly dubious decision over Jack Johnson, and he picked up the title stopping former light heavyweight boss Jack Root. Hart soon lost his championship to the far faster, more active Tommy Burns, who himself was no great shakes, but was certainly one of the best of the era. Fast forward to 1915 and the big lumbering Jess Willard comes to our attention. Willard wins the championship against Jack Johnson. Johnson always claimed he took a dive. I don't quite believe this. I just think Johnson got exhausted by the heat and got hit with a big right hand, but Willard wasn't very good, and Jack Dempsey absolutely pummeled him in 3 rounds. Willard was big, strong, slow, and wide open, but my God did he have a heart. The Manasseh Mauler really pummeled him that night, flooring him 7 times in the first round, breaking his ribs, his nose, his cheekbone, and pretty much every other bone in his body, and yet Willard still came out for the second before retiring on his stool in the third. Italy's Primo Carnera was a giant at the time, an enormous man weighing 260 pounds. He was huge for the era, and he won the championship from Jack Sharkey. Sharkey had soundly outboxed Carnera in their first fight, and Primo had been involved in numerous fixed matches before, notably against young Stribbling. However, I don't think the fix was in the rematch. I think Carnera just nailed him with a big right hand. Carnera made 2 defences before running into the big swinging, wisecracking Maxi Bear, and he was dropped 10 times and stopped in 10 ridiculously one-sided rounds. The next man to stand out like a sore thumb was Leon Spinks. Spinks, in only his 8th pro fight, won the heavyweight championship of the world, outscoring the badly faded Muhammad Ali in 1978. Neon Leon was an Olympic gold medalist and a fierce, aggressive fighter with a big right hand. However, his chin wasn't up to much and neither was his dedication. Ali outscored Leon over 15 rounds in a rematch, and it would send Spinks' career into a tailspin. His heavyweight career would never recover from being blown out in 1 round by Jerry Coetzee. While down at cruiserweight, he took an almighty beating from Dwight Mohammed Quayi for the WBA cruiserweight title. The 1980s was a time of dreadnought heavyweights, usually guarded by Don King, who would squander their talent. But the fact is, they had talent. John Tate was mechanical, but could box and use his strength well. Mike Weaver was a tough guy with a big punch. Michael Dukes had tremendous hand speed, but drugs caught up with him. Jerry Coetzee had his bionic right hand, and was surprisingly agile in his peak. Tim Witherspoon was a good box puncher. Pinklon Thomas had a beautiful left jab. Greg Page was thought to be the Muhammad Ali of the 80s with a punch, and Tony Tubbs was also a smooth boxer. So even though these fighters disappointed and had short title reigns and were normally hooked on drugs, they were still pretty decent fighters. It's also tempting to include Trevor Berbick due to his lack of talent, but Berbick was tough, strong and sturdy, and he pulled off some big upsets of the likes of Pinklon Thomas, Greg Page, and of course John Tate. Tony Tucker's IBF title reign lasted a magnificent 64 days, but the fact is Tucker defeated Buster Douglas in a good fight and was a talented heavyweight who lost his championship to Mike Tyson. So the next heavyweight lacking world-class credentials has to be Michael Bent. Bent had been a cracking amateur, but as a pro he'd lost his debut against one Jerry Jones in 1 round. He'd somehow earned a shot at the WBO title, presumably based on his victory over journeyman Mark Willis. Matched against Tommy Morrison, it looked like Bent was going to be knocked out in the first round when he was stung with a left hook. However, Tommy the Duke got a bit excited with himself, was floored 3 times and stopped in a round. Unsurprisingly, Bent's title reign didn't last long, and he was destroyed in 7 rounds by Herbie Hyde, before being forced into retirement due to the injuries he suffered. Bruce the Atlantic City Express Selden had a good left jab, but he wasn't world class. He picked up the vacant championship, stopping the aged Tony Tucker in 7 rounds and a cut eye. 1 defence against Joe hit forward before he squared off against Iron Mike Tyson. As in his fight with Riddick Bowe, Selden was blown away inside a round. However, his performance against Tyson, in which he looked like a deer in the headlights, has to be one of the worst ever. Honourable mention has to go to Herbie Hyde, who won his first WBO championship, stopping the aforementioned Michael Bent. He lost that championship when he was massacred in 6 rounds by Big Daddy Riddick Bowe. He reclaimed the championship, stopping the badly faded Tony Tucker in 2 rounds. 2 awful defences followed before he was blown out in 2 by Vitaly Klitschko. Hyde was an enormous puncher, was fast and flashy. He also couldn't take a heavyweight punch. Some would probably include Tommy the Duke Morrison and Frank Bruno as among the worst heavyweights of the 90s, but both were world-class fighters. Tommy the Duke had a big left hook and an exciting style, even though his chin wasn't up for much. And Frank had a big left jab and a big right hand, though his chin and stamina let him down at the highest level. John Ruiz was one of the worst fighters I have ever had the misfortune to watch. Every fight it was the same thing. Jab, hold, spoil, jab, hold, spoil. It was awful. However, he isn't among one of the worst heavyweights in the world. He defeated Holyfield, he defeated Rackman, he defeated Oquendo, Golota, so unfortunately I cannot include him on this list. Nor can I include Rackman, who was very limited. However, I feel I can include the likes of Nikolai Valuev. Valuev was huge. He managed to use that size to narrowly and debatably beat Ruiz, but he was not a very good fighter at all. Sergei Lyokovich was another one. Very lucky that he got a limited champion in Lamont Brewster. Brewster was limited, but he was also exciting and could punch. Oleg Maskayev could punch and box a bit, but he was very slow and very chinny. But he was lucky the heavyweight championship was in the hands of Hazim Rakhman when he fought for it. Sam Peter was another limited slugger, but at least he could punch. Ruslan Shagayev was a competent but unspectacular boxer. Bermain Stavern was a poor champion. He won the championship with counter-punching over Chris Arreola in 6 rounds. This probably confirmed he was a top 10 fighter, but he hadn't earned the title shot in the first place, and unsurprisingly he was badly outboxed by Deontay Wilder before being destroyed by Wilder in 1 round in their rematch. I'm not even sure I can consider Lucas Brown as a former champion, but he did win the championship with a come-from-behind knockout of Ruslan Shagayev. Big, strong, and he could punch. That's pretty much what Lucas Brown brought to the table. But Lucas Brown was like the second coming of Muhammad Ali when compared to Trevor Bryan. Bryan defeated the aforementioned Bermain Stavern before making 1 defense. He then actually stepped up to world level and got absolutely mullered by Daniel Dubois. And for a reason only the courts and the WBA can understand, Manuel Charr has been their champion twice. Charr is not world class. When he fought Vitaly Klitschko in his prime, he was stopped in 5 rounds. Cruiserweight Maris Bradis also flattened him in 6 rounds with an uppercut. But to be honest, the WBA is an absolute laughingstock, and I think that we should just ignore every single championship they've created. Considering it's one of the 2 oldest belts in the business, it's an absolute joke, and they are a disgusting organisation. Anyway, rant over. Outside of the WBA, the worst heavyweight champion in history has to be Charles Martin. Martin briefly held the IBF Championship. His title reign lasted a magnificent 85 days. The big southpaw hadn't earned the title opportunity. There was no significant wins on his record. He picked up the championship against Glasgow when Glasgow was injured, and he was absolutely destroyed in 3 rounds by Anthony Joshua. Since then, Prince Charles has confirmed that he's nowhere near world class, as he's lost every single time he's stepped up. What do you think of the list, fight fans? Have I missed anyone? And don't forget to like and subscribe.